Live from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, this is Native America Calling, and I'm your host, Shawn Spruce. In speech after speech here from the Fiserv Arena, Republicans at the National Convention are mounting a relentless attack on President Joe Biden and all he represents. At the same time, they are building up any progress they can attribute to their party. All of this is designed to win over your vote. In addition to electing Donald Trump, Republicans want to expand their lead in the U.S. House and flip the Senate majority. What would that look like for Native American voters? What do you think? What issues would you like to see Congress tackle? So far, even with a massive public messaging effort going on here in Milwaukee, Native issues are mostly absent. We'll get to one notable exception in a few minutes, but we also want to hear what's important to voters when it comes to Congress. What issues are you focused on? Is it inflation? Is it business regulation or taxes? Or are you more dialed into climate change, the trust responsibility, and abortion rights? Call us. Let us know. 1-800-996-2848. We've got the phone lines open right now. Connect with our Albuquerque studio, and they'll connect you with us here in Milwaukee. We'll get your comments on the air. 1-800-996-2848. Let's meet today's guests. Joining us on the phone first from Phoenix, Arizona is Shondiin Silversmith. She is the Indigenous Communities Reporter for Arizona Mirror. She is Diné. Hello, Shondiin, and welcome back to NAC. It's great to have you again.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Seated here directly to my left is none other than Mr. Levi Rickert. He is the publisher and editor of Native News Online. He is Prairie Band Potawatomi. He's been a guest many times also. Levi, welcome back to NAC. Good to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be with you today, Shawn.
And over to my far left is Sean Griswold. He is here all week with us live in our broadcast booth here at Media Row at the convention. Sean, of course, is the editor for Source New Mexico, part of the state's newsroom network. He's also our convention correspondent and political analyst. He is Laguna Pueblo. Sean, welcome back.
Oh, happy to be here. Day 3.
Absolutely, yeah. We're over the hump here, day 3, just getting into this convention. We're here on Media Row. We're in a building just adjacent to the main Fiserv Arena, and there's a lot of activity, a lot of delegates walking around, a lot of candidates, some elected leaders, some of the high-profile figures in the Republican Party have walked by. It's a pretty interesting environment for sure. Just lots to take in and just think about and just... Again, we're here broadcasting. We're going to broadcast again tomorrow here from the DNC. And Shondiin, I want to start off with you today, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Arizona. For a long time, for many years, Arizona has been considered a red state, but that took a big turn during the last presidential election. Districts with large Native constituencies played a big role in that flipping of Arizona into the blue zone. What kind of indications are you getting right now with regard to how that Native vote is shaping up for November?
One of the things that a lot of people need to remember is that Arizona does have 22 federally recognized tribes, and each of them have the ability to flip the state of Arizona. And that was evident in 2020 when Biden was elected, because he won by a very small margin in Arizona. And when you looked at the map for all of the districts and what districts were red and blue, you could see a lot of the tribal nations were predominantly blue. So it's interesting because it is still a battleground state. We have a Democratic governor right now, but we do have still a lot of Republican representation within Arizona, and especially in Congress, because one of the largest congressional districts in Arizona has a Republican representative, Republican Eli Crane, and he covers a lot of indigenous communities within his congressional district. So tribes are paying attention, and they are looking at what candidates are doing for tribal nations within the state of Arizona, because they want to make sure that they are working with these candidates and with these people on that government to government relationship, because they want to be able to maintain it and do what's best for their people and best for their tribe.
Okay, thanks, Shondiin. So obviously, tribes are very focused on that government to government relationship. So, what are the potential benefits or perhaps setbacks of a Republican majority in Congress for Arizona tribes? What are they concerned about most in that situation?
I think a good example would be right now with the Navajo Nation, the Hopi tribe, and the San Juan Paiute tribe trying to get their water settlement through Congress, and they're doing it now because they want to be able to push it through this current congressional delegation because they don't know what's going to happen in the next year and how that might change the House or change the Senate. So I think that is a big um, key point that they're looking at. They want to make sure that they're working with congressional leaders that understand their communities and are willing to advocate for some of the key issues that are important to them, like water infrastructure or federal funding or being able to maintain their tribal lands. So I think that's probably a really big concern. And with that water settlement going through Congress right now, who knows what's going to happen with it because it does have a $5 billion price tag on it. So that is concerning, but the tribes are hopeful for it. So I think when it comes to working with congressional delegation, they want to be able to make sure that they can advocate for the issues that are important to them and their community to be able to support the projects that they want to help maintain and build their community.
Shondiin, what about some of the immigration issues? Because there in Arizona, you have the Tohono O'odham people there, right straddling the border to Mexico. What are those folks concerned about that tribe with regard to some of these immigration issues? Because huge, huge issue and very polarizing between Democrats and Republicans. What are you hearing from them down south?
So the Tohono O'odham tribe is one of the only tribes that has dual citizenship, that has the ability to go between the United States and Mexico. And it's interesting because when you hear from constituents within their community, they see the border in a completely different way. They they see it as this kind of like forced boundary on their land rather than trying to keep people out. They're keeping people, like, it's blocking them from being able to explore their homelands the way that it was meant to be. So it's interesting because I know an organization that is based on Tohono O'odham, Indivisible Tohono. They work a lot with their community to talk about these issues, to talk about what type of border issues are important to their community, and and obviously a lot of it has to do with some of the cultural significance of the land surrounding the border, because obviously when the border wall was being implemented and being constructed, it does damage to the land. So those are some real concerns within that community because they want to be able to maintain the original structures of their land and keep it the way that it was intended to be. So, yeah.
Okay. I've been down there before, and I know they have a fair number of tribal members who actually live on the Mexico side of the border. So they even have tribal
Hmm.
members that cross every day and have family members on opposite sides. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic down there. Shondiin, what do you see with Republican candidates reaching out to secure Native votes? Are they going into Native communities? Are they meeting with tribal leaders in Arizona? Are they working hard to embrace and secure Native voters there in the state?
I honestly think it is Native grassroots organizations that are activating their own community to vote. Um, and
Mhm.
it's interesting because you would think that either candidate, Democrat or Republican, Independent or whatever, they would want to be able to go into these communities as often as they want to be able to earn their votes and rally for their votes. But you don't see many of them hosting rallies within these communities or actively trying to go and canvass these communities. But you see Native run voting organizations doing that, grassroots organizations doing that, Native women, Native men, Native youth going out into their communities and talking about the importance of voting, as well as presenting them with candidates that are running. They want to be able to educate their communities and educate the people about the importance of voting and the people that are running for it, so they understand how this directly impacts them. So I've always noticed that during election time, it's always been grassroots organizations or Native-focused voting organizations that have been the ones on the ground actively trying to encourage Indigenous people to vote and make sure they're registered to vote. So yeah, I think the most recent congressional person that I remember visiting the Navajo Nation was Ruben Galgo, and he is running for Senate. But that was a Democratic candidate. I can't think of a Republican candidate that I have seen visit any of the tribes in Arizona. I might be wrong, but I haven't noticed any yet. I know that especially one of Arizona's largest congressional districts with Representative Eli Crane, I don't know if he's held rallies within his congressional district that include Indigenous communities. I haven't seen that yet.
All right. Shondiin, thank you for kicking off our conversation today here at Native America Calling, live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk more with our guests here joining me on Media Row. We got the phone lines open if anybody would like to call in and share your thoughts today. 1-800-99-NATIVE.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the chairman of the Forest County Potawatomi Nation, James Crawford.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Wisconsin. Good evening. I am James Crawford, the chairman of the Forest County Potawatomi community. I'd like to welcome all of you to not only Milwaukee, but also to an area of the state that is part of the homeland of the Potawatomi people. Milwaukee is a particularly special place for Potawatomi. It was once home to several Potawatomi villages, including a village close to where we sit today. Our ancestors occupied these lands for hundreds of years, fishing area rivers and lakes, hunting the land, tapping maple tree groves for sugar, and harvesting crops in fields each fall. The Potawatomi connection to Milwaukee continues. Today, our tribe is part of what makes Milwaukee a great place to live and work. And while we are best known for entertainment and tourism, our tribe is also a part of the fabric of this community through our construction, technology, and real estate business ventures, and the charitable work our foundation does with community nonprofits. Thank you. Potawatomi are just one of 11 tribes in Wisconsin and one of 574 in the United States. Even though each tribe is unique with their own histories, cultures, and distinct challenges and opportunities, the tribes still share many commonalities, especially a desire and need to keep our people safe. And right now, Native people are facing real threats to ensure our safety. The growing use and abuse of illegal drugs are claiming countless lives on reservations across this country. And Native American women and girls continue to be exploited, trafficked, and subjected to violence at reprehensible levels. So tonight's theme, Make America Safe Again, is especially important for us. I look forward to working with everyone here to make America safe again. to help us preserve, protect, and enhance our future generations. Miigwech, and God bless America.
This is the only Native person to speak so far in the convention, and the only time we've heard any reference to Native people or issues. I want to get reactions from both Levi and Shawn with regard to this address from James Crawford yesterday evening. Levi, you first. What do you think?
Well, let me speak as a fellow Potawatomi man. I was pretty proud when I heard his voice talk about this is Potawatomi land. And those of you who are familiar with downtown Milwaukee, you can see the Potawatomi Casino, the word Potawatomi going across the top of it in a couple directions. So also makes me feel really good. And you're right. He's like my understanding, the only scheduled Native American to speak at the convention. So to have that voice out there, and I know they were co-sponsored, co-hosts for the national convention here. It was really good to see he was on television, listen to him. But I was really particularly happy that he brought up the fact that so many Native Americans are dying, as are other people, from the drug overdose, the opioid crisis in America. And he mentioned the missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. And I just think that's really important because quite clearly the Republican platform has no mention of Native Americans.
Okay. What was also interesting is, unlike most of the other speeches, it wasn't a harsh criticism of Joe Biden or his administration, but at the same time, he also didn't openly endorse Donald Trump either. So, Shawn, what was your take?
Yeah, I mean, similar idea that I really felt that in the same point of just being excited that, hey, look, we finally got a Native person here after spending days just trying to find a Native person, or even just talking to every single person who's always asking you, why are you here? Why is a Native American person here? And just giving everybody the 101 about our existence and just why we're here. So, yes, we definitely there. We watched the speech. I was on the floor directly in front of him as he gave the speech. If we were in a college setting or any other type of other place, it would have been called the land acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. That's what he did. But it wasn't called that because we're in a Republican space where those DEI sort of initiative buzzwords aren't really discussed. But that's what he did. He gave the history for why we are here. And while discussing public safety measures and the issues he brought up some tones that we've been hearing in Republican circles, particularly for people who probably are paying attention to what's happening with South Dakota, about this idea that cartels are using reservations as a way to run their business operations and bring illicit issues to that. The problem with that in South Dakota that we've seen is that it's conflating that as a reservation problem, as if the cartels and drug use is just an issue on the reservations when we know that is a U.S. American problem. Mm-hmm. So that was unfortunately a little bit of a concern to note that as we're streamlining towards that issue, it does fall in line with some messaging from Republicans we're seeing nationally that is a bit of a misleading way, and also targeting communities that could be harmful for us too.
Okay. What do you think the reaction was there on the floor? I mean, all the delegates. I mean, you mentioned it was essentially a land acknowledgement. He talked about some of the issues that tribal nations face. Do you think that resonated with the attendees there last night? Do you think they got the message to the extent that you did?
You know, that's the interesting part about being here is that we can be excited about seeing other Native people. We can be excited about seeing a Native man. And his speech was at the end of the beginning of the speeches as people are still filtering in. But the convention floor was filled with delegates. And directly after his speech was just under 5 minutes, I stopped asking people after the seventh person, hey, what did you think about that? Because every single person ended up telling me, you know what, I really wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry, I cannot tell you. And it just brought it right. That excitement I had about at least seeing this, even if the messaging is something that is just is there, the representation on the part didn't fall with at least the convention people I was talking to. And like I said, I stopped after the seventh person. I was hoping to get reaction, and nobody was paying attention. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it really mattered or hit for the overall convention space. But ultimately, we're at the same space we would be in our general position of just showing why it matters we're here.
All right. And we've talked about this a little bit. I mean, there's just so much going on. It is a little bit of a circus in some ways. And that's easy to happen, right? It's easy for somebody to not pay attention to a speaker at a certain time or be focused on other events going on or just some of the figures that we see. I mean, I saw one guy walk by with a big Donald Trump suit on. It had Trump's picture on the pants and the jacket, and it's just there's so much going on. So, but yeah, it's disappointing to hear that and again, I think a lot of it has to do with the timing, right? Because the later it goes into the evening, the more dialed in, the more high-profile speakers come on, and people seem to pay a little bit more attention too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's when you have like network television also focused on the major people, and ultimately this is a party. Like, we're looking at the platform. We're going to get closer to the policy positions. But you're right. We're looking at a man right now dressed up in a suit that looks like bricks, which might be the Trump wall. Roger Stone is out here walking out. Roger Stone is out of jail, people. He is out here walking around in Milwaukee with his whole crew. No, everybody's
I think he turned in his orange jumpsuit for a seersucker blue and white suit.
And they've got the Steve Bannon booth over here. Steve Bannon is missing, of course, but all of his
there's Representative Lauren Boebert right there. Lauren Boebert. Do you support tribal sovereignty?
I absolutely do, and I have Ute Mountain Utes in my district and the Southern Utes.
Hold on one second. We're actually going to get here. Representative Boebert, actually, thank you for joining us real quickly. We want to ask you, what are your thoughts on who should be the Interior Secretary under a new Trump administration if that were to happen?
I think Lauren Boebert needs to be the Secretary of Interior.
Are you putting that out right now? Do you want to tell the Trump a bit like President Trump?
President Trump, I would like to be Secretary of Interior. No, I think that this is actually one of the most important agencies within the federal government. Public lands are something that are very dear to me, and I've spent a lot of time on our tribal lands with our chairman and our council members there on with the Ute Mountain Utes and the Southern Utes, and it is these are people that I just love and dearly. And I absolutely care for their sovereignty, their prosperity, and to ensure that the state and local governments and the federal government is not infringing on your sovereign right.
Do you find that it's important for the federal government to be able to, excuse us one second, is it important for the federal government to move some BLM or interior offices into local states like perhaps Grand Junction or in the West?
Well, it's amazing that you asked that. So actually, Secretary Bernhardt, under the Trump administration, did move the Bureau of Land Management headquarters to Grand Junction, Colorado, and immediately Secretary Haaland said, we're getting this out of here. Joe Biden and Secretary Haaland said, no, we don't need boots on the ground. We don't need to be with the people that are affected by our policies with public lands. We're going to put them back in a concrete building in Washington, D.C., and have them stay there. And I fought to keep that as the Bureau of Land Management regional Western headquarters and save 46 jobs so we could have boots on the ground, those who are actually experiencing what is happening on our public lands. I want our forests to be managed. We know how crucial water is, especially in our tribal lands. I have worked to get tens of millions of dollars for more water storage projects for our tribal lands and so much more. But if we begin to actually manage our forests and rather than react to problems, then we will have healthy watersheds. In Colorado,
that's a great question. Actually, I want to ask you about that because as we speak about priorities here, tribal nations and generally the domestic policy is about energy. We all want energy production. And so how will the federal government, if there is another Trump administration, work with tribal governments who are active more in conservating land and not extracting land? How will the federal government work with those tribes?
Yes, well, I am pro fossil fuels, oil and gas, and I especially want to explore nuclear. But I think that our tribal lands are impacted severely when we are shutting down our coal-fired energy plants. States like Colorado, we have some of the cleanest coal in the entire world, and that affects those tribal lands down the road that are getting energy, and they're forced to burn wood in some areas, which we know is a much dirtier way to produce heat. And also in one of my tribal lands, we have a lot of drilling that takes place, and I believe that is a cleaner way to take care of the environment and extract those resources that we have been blessed with to use what's given to us by the earth to produce this energy in a clean and efficient way, rather than just covering it up with solar panels and wind turbines, killing so many vital species.
Well, Representative Boebert, you're in line with potentially an interior position if the Trump administration needs one. But I have to ask, what would be your viewpoints on the Antiquities Act?
Oh, the Antiquities Act. Nope. So there's been a lot of things through the Antiquities Acts where we have had land grabs by the federal government, and that is
like Bears Ears National Monument. Would you support
Correct.
a reduction of Bears Ears if you were to become Interior Secretary?
So I do not want any land grabs. I do not want more wilderness areas. I don't want these areas where we are unable to actually manage the land, where our farmers and ranchers can't have grazing on the land, where our waterways are locked up in wild and scenic rivers and things like that. So this is our land for the people to use and use efficiently. We are good stewards of our land, as are you, and we want to take care of it, want it to be healthy and produce everything that it's intended to.
Well, thank you very much for chatting with
Yes.
us, stopping by.
Yes,
you so
thank
much.
you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Appreciate it, Representative, very much. And, folks, this is why we came to the Republican National Convention. This is why we have this booth here, because we were hoping to get some quick, just off-the-cuff interviews with high-profile Republican congresspeople. And, wow, Lauren Boebert just walked along. Shawn, quick fact-checking here with regard to her comments and the answers to your questions.
I mean, the fact-checking there is really, it's just ultimately those are their positions.
Mm-hmm.
But we got the answer we came here for. We want to know who could potentially run the Interior Department. And Representative Lauren Boebert just told Donald Trump, I want to be your Interior Secretary. Breaking news on Native America Calling. But obviously there has to be an election first. This administration, if they were to be elected, we now have a little bit more insight as to what their priorities are going to be. And while I may be able to fact check and with Representative Boebert, she's not in that position to make any of those changes right now. She's still a representative for Colorado.
Okay.
But if she were to become Interior, she just gave us some idea about some policy ideas.
Okay, let's play what if for a minute. Let's say Trump wins in November. Let's say Lauren Boebert is our next Secretary of Interior. Levi, how do you think tribes would react to that? What kind of relationship would that amount to?
Honestly, I don't know. I think that they would have to really look at her track record, and we do need to fact check some of the things she said, see what her position is on tribal issues, and quite frankly, I think there would be resistance due to the fact she is so far right.
I mean, she just said she supports drilling and that she doesn't
Correct.
like the Antiquities Act. Mm-hmm. She also said she would reduce Bears Ears National Monument.
But you do have tribes that are invested in fossil fuels.
Well, all tribes are different, of course.
Right, but there would be support from some of the tribes in Arizona, from some of the tribes in Alaska, from some of the tribes in the Dakotas. I mean,
Yeah, and,
right.
and part of why I asked Representative Boebert about the offices to Grand Junction, I have to take this back to Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation. I know this is not the platform that is for the Republican Party, and I know consistently that people tell us that Donald Trump is not supporting it, but the Heritage Foundation has a vice presidential candidate on the ticket, and the first point about the offices moving to Grand Junction is part of the plan, number one in the plan for the Interior Department.
Okay.
And Representative Boebert just said she's going to do it again.
Levi, what's your reaction here? Just looking around the room again, and there goes the guy with the brick wall suit walking by.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Outside the two arenas, there were protesters last night, and those who are anti-Trump. Inside, you see people, obviously, it's their convention, so they're going to be pushing their agenda as fast and far as they can, because this is their week in the spotlight, so to speak. So I get it, and I'm glad we're here. And I back to the point of some of the other people really not paying attention to Chairman Crawford's comments. The idea that we are here as Native media covering it is very, very important.
Let's go to the phones right now. We have Shell, who is listening on KISU in Fort Hall, Idaho. Hello, Shell. Thank you for calling in today.
Shawn, how yes you? Good morning, Shawn. How are you?
Shell, I'm doing great. I wish you were here with us, though. I think you'd enjoy this convention.
Yeah. What I'd like to see is more and better housing. There's old, like all you see on the reservation are trailer houses and these old dilapidated government houses. Right across the line is the non-natives. They got some, houses that have imagination put into it. That's what I'd like to see is houses with a little bit of imagination,
Okay.
like Dracula's castle or Frankenstein's castle or,
Dracula's castle.
Albert Hall or the Wolfman,
Shell, I always enjoy it when you call in. But, Shell, I mean, I think you speak for a lot of Native American folks out there at the community level. And, we talked about the importance of having Deb Haaland as the Interior Secretary and the importance of having Native American people in Congress. But I think for a lot of folks, a lot of Native people in the communities, they're thinking more at the agency level. They're probably more concerned with who the local superintendent is at their BI agency, or who works in realty, and who they have to talk to about getting the title status report for their new house that they want to build. And Levi, what's your thought on that? I mean, again, how well do these issues filter down to folks there at the community level?
Well, I think it's really important. What the Congress looks like is just tremendously important. You look at, like, for instance, Tom Cole is the Republican. He's chair of the Appropriations Committee. And after the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the San Carlos versus Holland, the decisions came down in favor of the tribes and the third-party billing. There was a need, there was a call for, like, minimum $800 million additional funding for the Indian Health Service, IHS. I think high number was $2.1 billion, and he actually helped get that money secured in this package that passed the House last week. Still needs to go through the Senate, but representation matters, and I think there's, on the other hand, you do have, like, a Republican Senator Daines out in Montana who held up a nomination of a Native American judge, Dana Jackson, that President Biden, I think in April, nominated to become a federal judge. And by the way, President Biden has appointed more federal Native American judges than all U.S. presidents in the history of the United States. So it's really important, but that got held up. So people in Congress can make these decisions that really, really impact the lives of Native Americans. Kind of a bird's eye view overall, there seems to be a lot of bipartisan support for Native American issues. However, it has been historically underfunded, and I think that with the Democrats, they push hard to have those increases. And even we got to take our hat off to Tom Cole this time. He's really gone to bat for Indian country.
Okay, and we're hoping to talk to Tom Cole tomorrow, perhaps in the morning. We've got another caller on the line. I know this person well. I'm going to refer to her as Auntie Evelyn from Laguna Pueblo, but she lives in Albuquerque now. And Evelyn listens on KUNM. Hello, Evelyn. It's great to hear from you.
Good morning, and thanks to all of you for all this information that you're bringing to us. I've been so concerned about the silence in the community regarding Project 2025, and I'm especially concerned, as you would guess, with its impact on the Indian Child Welfare Act. I mean, we are not out of the woods by any means, and I'd like to recommend a book to the listeners. It's written by Naomi Schaefer Riley.
Okay.
The title is The New Trail of Tears.
The Trail of Tears.
And the subtitle is How Washington is Destroying American Indians. And overall, I would describe the book as propagandistic. But I think it's very important for our public to be knowledgeable about what's in this book. She is associated with the American Enterprise Institute, which is a partner of the Heritage Foundation that authored the Project 2025. So I would just encourage as many of you who will to order this book, read it, and see the kinds of challenges before us.
Okay. Well, Evelyn, thank you for calling. And next time we get together, let's go eat somewhere. We always have a good time when we get to hang out.
All right, we will do so. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Evelyn Blanchard, calling in from Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got another caller on the line right now, Stephanie, who is listening in Durango, listening to station KUNM online. Hello, Stephanie. You're on the air.
Hello.
Yate. What did you think of Lauren B?
I didn't.
Okay,
That's how
yeah.
meaningless she is to me. And actually, I find it ironic that she made no mention of the fact that she's not even going to be in the same district as the Ute tribes are in right now. She's moving to the 4th Congressional District. She's already won her primary. And so that is a heavily Republican area on the eastern part of the state of Colorado. So there's not going to be any tribal issues that she's going to be dealing with on that side. She'll actually be cozying up to all the ranchers and farmers out that way, which she mentioned in her little comments and stuff, you know. So she will put those constituents first, as always. And the other irony that I found with her conversation was her reference to my tribal lands. It's like she needs to be reminded that she's on stolen land, and she is managing stolen land, or wants to believe that she's managing stolen land, and she would be she would not be the right person to be Secretary of Interior, because she will put white interests before anybody else's interest, and that includes farmers, ranchers, resource extraction, everything.
Stephanie, thank you for calling. Really appreciate that perspective. Coming in from southern Colorado, you are in that state that Lauren Boebert represents, so really appreciate that perspective on Native America Calling. I want to introduce another guest into the conversation now. Joining us here on the convention, or the media row floor to my left, is none other than Myron Lizer. Hello, sir. Nice to meet you. Yate, former Vice President of the Navajo Nation here at the Republican National Convention. Tell us more about your role here. What brought you to the convention this year, and what do you hope to accomplish, sir?
Well, first reaction, this is my first non-virtual RNC convention. As you know, last one was done virtually, and having spoke on that and being beamed across the airwaves there was pretty enlightening and then pretty eye-opening. And now, 4 years later, we're doing it again, except this time it's in person. I'm in awe of everything, especially all the security, the high-level security that's happening. But more than that, I think I'm here from Indian country to check in. This is Indian country checking in a lot of ways, you know, being the former vice president of the largest tribe, largest land base, largest membership. I think the Republican Party is a little suspect in their outreach and in their understanding of Indian country. So here to check in with everything, our lack of economic development, our lack of services, our lack of just, well, I kind of scoffed when Biden-Harris seemingly won the election, right? And they came in with the Build Back Better platform, and I said, wow, I mean, how can you build back to a place you've never been? I think we're catching up. So that's what I'm here to do, is catch up Indian country.
Well, you mentioned the importance of just making sure that Republicans are dialed into the issues that you feel are important, and also, you know, your constituents. And I mean, how much of your time here are you spending just being able to have advanced level conversations with folks about Native issues and policy, or do you find yourself in situations where you just have to spend a lot of time educating and informing them on who Native people are and what the issues we face are?
Bingo. That last statement was it. A lot of people, it's out of sight, out of mind largely. And, you know, my first 4 years in office there, it was spent educating and re-educating those that you thought kind of knew about you, because, you know, you're their constituent. So it's a lot of that. And, you know, I just think Indian country needs to develop a relationship with the RNC and vice versa. Maybe the latter being more the case, because, you know, you don't know somebody unless you know them by name. You've been to their lands, you know their plight, you know why they need your advocacy. And I just tell you, you know, I think it's really a lot of education on both sides. And I think the outside, RNC, they want to come in the country, and they're suspect, and they're being challenged every time, it seems like, by our people. Their comments are, well, you only come when you want to vote. And then, you know, where were you the first 4 years, you know, or the 3 years? And so I think the outreach has always been suspect. I've been working since 2016 to try to burgeon out a stronger Republican response. It's hard. People, depending again on their holding, you know, what's their experience with Indian country? Maybe I think largely people are it's hard to approach Indian country because they don't want to offend, and so thus their first outreach is a little you know, I guess it wasn't really an outreach. It was just like they got offended themselves and by the responses, and they left. And So I'm here to really help just develop that relationship. I feel like that's my brand of politics, number one.
Okay.
Is the ability to influence somebody's decision. And I don't play politics per se. I mean, sure, I am a Republican, but it's only because I'm a business owner. I don't want to pay more taxes than I have to. And, the producers shouldn't be taxed, more than the others. And that's where I think is a lot of the argument. So.
Okay. Well, Myron, I think where you can offer so much value in a venue like this. There's so much talk now about bipartisan support and how do we bridge the gap and how do we get both parties to sit down in a room and negotiate and talk about issues. And what's so fascinating about you is, of course, you're a Republican, but you served in Jonathan Nez's administration and he is a Democrat. So what advice can you offer? What can you say to everybody here? Like, hey, how can Democrats and Republicans work together? Because you folks did.
Yeah, I think firstly, anything of great significance in Indian country, new developments, new infrastructure, new laws that would come down is largely at a bipartisan clip, right? And I feel like there's misrepresentation going on. There's not a lot of openly Republican Native leaders, Native people. I think they're all closet, if I could say that. Kind of joke, tongue in cheek, really. But I can only speak from my experience with Jonathan when he asked me to be his vice president candidate. I heard now, this is all circumspectly, since we got elected, and it was a 67% vote of the people, right? Mandate. We won 43,000 votes to 21,000 votes. So a sure slam dunk. But they wanted change, and this is where Jonathan, I believe, was strategic. He brought in a business owner. He brought in clergy. I was a former pastor. He brought in a community leader. I was the school board president of a local Christian school. I kind of wore many hats. I'm definitely not an expert in any of those things. I just know a little bit about a lot of things, and I think that helped me kind of cover any subject matter that one could talk about. But how do you work together? I believe that you have to desire it. You have to realize that my brother, that maybe a Democrat, he's got red bloods flowing through his veins, and then we should love our neighbor as ourselves, and really take it to heart, because that's really what it is. And it's the subject matter that divides us. So I think we shouldn't be so easily defended. And I'm one of those. I get offended, but I don't display and I don't retaliate. That's where I think we need to stop doing that, and we need to be open to hearing one out. In other words, hear them out. You got to let them speak first. When they pause, then you can interject.
All right. Well, you mentioned Jonathan Nez, and of course he is running for Senate in Arizona. Have you talked at all or consulted with him at all regarding his campaign?
No. I think people, kind of think we still talk. When he selected the other running mate, the last election, that was his decision. And we're all grown men here. I didn't cry over that. And we just thought, well, we'll let them run their race. And, didn't like it at first. That stings always, like I said earlier about being offended, right? I had to eat my own words there. But we really did step back. We tried to be as supportive as we could be. And when he lost, it was like, wow, we stepped back even more, because somebody in this political realm, that's what they use to grandstand. See, stand on my soapbox. I told you so. You shouldn't have done what you did. Blah, blah, blah. I could have easily done that, and I was tempted to. I'm only human. But we stepped back, my wife and I, and says, well, this is their show. It was his loss, his L, right? And, albeit, it's just one of those things that you have to maintain a working relationship. If he approached me and asked me for my endorsement, which they haven't done, this camp, nobody's reached out to me, I would probably say no, because that's what he told me.
Okay. Hey, real quick, I want to ask you, we have just a minute, just under a minute. 2 quick questions. Would you support Lauren Boebert to be Interior Secretary? She just told us she wants to be the Secretary of Interior. Would you support that?
Wow, I'd have to have a visit first and see if she has the capacity.
Okay, and have you had any discussions since you talked to people across the aisle, have you spoken with President Boo Nygren about what it would like to be working with the Trump administration?
We are ramping it up. We have a great relationship with President Nygren and myself, so that discussion can easily be taken up, but we haven't done. We're trying to get in and develop more of his projects, help him. I would love to become his outside advisor. I'm economically inclined. I see they need a victory right now. They're struggling in all their ways. And I'm here to say, you know what, we got projects parked that would benefit Navajo with the jobs and revenue. And that's what he's saying as well. But I think we got some really good stuff cooking right now.
And you could be that person to help with the federal government. Excellent. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I said yes.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I feel like this show could go on for another hour or two, but we are going to have to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to our guests who joined us here today. Seated to my left, Levi Rickert, Myron Lizer, and, of course, Sean Griswold. And on the phone, we had Shondiin Silversmith, who joined the conversation as well. Also, the great callers who contributed to the conversation here on Native America Calling. I'm Shawn Spruce.